This video is introducing the Applied ICT Unit 7 database using database software exam for May 2013. This is for the Excel spec. So the first page follows generally its information. The scenario is about a sixth form college, so it does have some similarities to the January 2013 option. It generally involves people recording a bunch of information about fitness tests that people are doing and having multiple records of these, and not having them just like a pass or fail, but want to track their progress over a set period of time. In this case, this example is for months, so it says fitness testing takes place once a month, and students complete the same exercise each month. And so, for example, that could be the number of press-ups, the time it takes them to do a 400-meter track, sit-ups, etc. And the way they're assessed is slightly different. They either test the number of repetitions that a student can do in 60 seconds. So that might be number of press-ups in 60 seconds, or others could be how long a position could be maintained. So they might be looking at form, so how long you can sit against a wall. Other bits, these enrichment activities, and what involves not really relevant information, because we're just looking at creating a prototype just for Mr. McGarry, the PE teacher who runs it. So his current scenario is he uses a paper-based system of testing, and they can sort of track their information. And he's asked us to basically make a more efficient IT solution, and that can also do some analysis of this, of the fitness records. We're just making a prototype, so obviously not everything will be finished, and it is only going to have the 4 tasks which will be outlined. And then the final system, based on the evaluation of what you produce in the exam for the prototype and the recommendations for future functionality. This is where you've got to come up with different ideas for what you think and how it can be made easier to use. And then you need to look at who you're going to target it at, whether it's the adult users, or you want the students to actually get involved and actually entering in their data themselves. We'll split this up into the 4 tasks, and there'll be separate videos for each of these. Basically adding new students and general things it needs to do for that. Making sure that their name and date of birth are present, so that means that that information is required. Generating a unique student ID, a mixture of letters from their name and a sequential 4-digit number. Note, when you've been asked to generate some information, you cannot use that as one of the validation rules, and they don't like using validation rules on primary keys. So any validation rules you put in later on, do not use any primary keys. Storing the student requirements, details of all the requirements are met, so if their name and date of birth are present, then we can store them. So we've got to do some checks to make sure that that information has been entered, and then providing messages to let them know what's happening, so if it's been rejected or if it's going to be approved. The second task is adding a monthly fitness test. This is something that's going to be a bit different because it requires unique identification key. That is where we're not going to be too sure of how it could be presented. It could be just a number, but unique obviously means it's got to be one of a kind, or it could just be a number that automatically increments, or it could be just a random, or randomly assigned number. We'll look at different ways of generating that as well. It also has the month of the test. So note that it's sort of saying generation, so it might want to actually automatically create that based on what today's date is. So we'll look at different ways of doing that, or ways that we can pick that from a drop-down menu. And a new record for each exercise. So this will be, so we create a monthly test, and then we also have to basically create blank entries for every single student for all the different exercises, so that you can record that month's exercise. So for example, in April we need to create all the tests for April but not put any values in, so that later on in part 3 we can go and enter in all their test results. up for is basically making the report and then printing it out so it's easy to receive. Obviously there's going to be the other components to this as well. Activity 1, analysing the problem, what input do we have to do, what processes, and then what output, so how we manipulate the data. Then we have to create the database by getting the data file and splitting that up. Part 3 is most of what you've seen up here, particularly activities 1, 2 and 3, creating the user interface. Then there's normally a testing section, which is usually activity 4, activity 5 creating the reports, and activity 6 is usually creating the evaluation. So that links back into this final statement of what your prototype does, and recommendations for it, and how it could be improved. Okay, that just concludes the final overview of what the actual product is about in this project. Later videos will show how we can go about actually creating this.